to my channel if you're returning. If you're new here, my name is Tori, and I wanted to do a quick flip of my reading journal. It's kind of what I have been focusing on. I really haven't been doing great with my journaling lately, or my planner, to be honest, but I plan to kind of update you all in my next plan with me on everything that's been going on. But for now, I just wanted to share what I've kind of been hunkering down in and working on when I do feel like writing and working with stationery. I fell behind in this, and so I was focusing on trying to catch up, and then it was kind of the only thing I was touching for a minute. So this is an A5 Good Ink Impressions journal from, I just bought it from Barnes & Noble, and I have different stickers on the front. That's Coffee Monsters Co., and then this one is Planner Monkey Co., and then these two are just from a sticker pack from Amazon. And I just have these. Anything that looks like this is from the reading journal stickers from Planner Monkey Co. So we dive right in. I'm going to try to go through these quickly, but also I'm going to try to talk about each book I have journaled about. So it may be a longer video. You might want to grab a snack. But again, like I said, I'm trying to get through it quickly. So I have an index to start, and a lot of my reading journal is influenced by Plant-Based Bride, and she does a lot of reading content and reading journal content, and I felt like it was a good way to capture what I was reading, as opposed to like I was trying to do in my last reading journal, like stream of consciousness journaling. But I don't normally have like a journal with me when I read, and I'm too impatient to stop reading to write down thoughts. So I felt like this would be a better setup for me to read it and then journal about it later. This is everything I've read so far this year, and I think I'm going to be running out of room in my index, so I may have to create a new one somewhere in here. But I definitely have the room. I have an A to Z kind of reading tracker about different books, with starting with different letters of the alphabet. Some I'm doing great on, and some I have not even read one with. The Around the World tracker, I didn't really do this correctly, so that's on me. But it's just, I cut out a basic outline of the continents, and I just kind of wanted to see where I was reading the most out of. I definitely don't count North America unless it's a Canadian or like a Mexican kind of setting, because that is like the dominant culture, so I don't really count that per se. But I have read a couple of books this year set in Mexico, and I think one in Canada. Yeah, one in Canada. So I do log on the back like where the stories were. So like this one was in Toronto. I have 25 books in 2025. I have yet to read any of them, but I'm hoping in the second half of the year I can get through them. I have a book of the month like list of what my favorite book of the month was. This is like the book bracket that Plant-Based Bride does. I figured I would try something similar, but you know, she waits till the end of the year. So, and then I start with January, and I have like a title, an author, and page number of where each title is journaled about. And so I read a lot of children's literature because I am a children's librarian. I am currently about to transition into a middle school reading teacher. I don't foresee me changing my reading habits, but I won't have access to the library books that I currently have access to right now. So I think my reading may change slightly, but I am never one to, like, I read all kinds of books, age ranges, etc. So these two specifically were books that were added to my collection in my library, and any children's book going forward is probably something that was added to my collection, and I wanted to read it to see if I could, or well, not to see if I could, but like to know what it was about in case I had people asking about it, or if they were looking for a book that, you know, that specific novel or whatever touched on. Does that, I hope that makes sense. So this one is the 14th book in the Bake Shop Mysteries by Ellie Alexander. It's like my cozy mystery series that I always kind of dip in and out of throughout the years. And I was reading one. I kind of stopped after this one, I think. This one I read as an audiobook on my Libby app, and it was really, really good. I loved this. And I just used a combination of like my Pilot Juice and Jelly Roll gel pens for writing in here. For the most part, I have branched out into my fountain pens. The paper is 68 GSM Tomoe River paper, and it's pretty interesting. I like it. But we read All About Love in my library's adult book club, and it is by Bell Hooks, and I just wrote a bunch of quotes that stuck out to me for this journal entry. Like, some of them are like, I'll reflect, but if it's like a really mind-blowing novel that just has so many quotes, I'll probably just put down quotes. For example, this one, this is I'm Still Here, Black Dignity in a World Made for Whiteness by Austin Channing Brown. And I read it twice because I was just so, I was just enraptured by the way that Brown writes and how they made connections to race and Christianity, and how she experiences racism in the church. And I think it's something that is definitely not talked about enough. And so I really, really value this book. I ended up, first time I listened to it on audiobook, and then I purchased it so that I could dive deeper and save all the quotes that I really found poignant. So we go into February. This is like the February setup. I had a graphic novel I read, and it's centered around Barbara Gordon. She is Police Commissioner Gordon's daughter in the DC universe of Batman. And then some of these other ones I was reading for Black History Month. So I read The Other Black Girl, Mame, and As the Wicked Watch. I really, really loved Mame. So good. There's just so much here. I related really well to, like, really deeply to the main character, and I cannot recommend this book enough. Yeah. And As the Wicked Watch was interesting. It didn't click with me the way that Mame did, though I obviously had enough to write about here. The Other Black Girl was interesting. It wasn't my favorite read, and I felt kind of validated on that when I looked at the Goodreads reviews, and definitely found that my perspective was something that other people had too. So I was like, oh, okay, so I'm not the only one. And then this was a story that features a trans character in my children's section, and that can get very controversial, especially here in Mississippi. So I wanted to make sure to read it so I knew, like, if a concerned parent decided to challenge the book, I would know what the book is about. And this is like an extremely, like, there's nothing in this story that is controversial in my opinion, but that's just my opinion. I joined a horror book club and read Grady Hendrix's Witchcraft for Wayward Girls, and of course that stuck with me as well. Oh my goodness. Definitely some trigger warnings there for gore because it is horror. And Grady Hendrix, if you have heard of him, he usually writes socially conscious horror is what I would call it. Like, he uses horror stories to look at the social constructs in which we live, I think the most famous book he's known for is the Southern Book Club's Guide to Slaying Vampires. And that one kind of looks at like class, wealth, privilege, gender roles, stuff like that. And this one was about a teenager who gets pregnant in the 70s or 60s or 70s and is sent to a home for girls, and delves into kind of what that was like at that time period, and involves some, spooky witchcraft and feminism and awesome defiance against things that they had no control over. And I just, yeah, Grady Hendrix is a great writer, and he is a white male, but he did take the time at the end of the book to talk about how he did a thorough, in-depth research about the concept of the homes for women and young girls who were pregnant in this time, because he actually found out that he had an ancestor who was sent to one of these homes, and that kind of spiraled him down into this topic, and he ended up interviewing a lot of different women who were sent to these homes as teenagers, because it was improper to get pregnant out of wedlock, especially in the 1960s. So yeah, this is so good, so good. This is March. I was just doing some collage here. I like to collage whenever I'm just feeling dysregulated or discombobulated. So then I have, these were more reads for Black History Month, and then this one I read because it was a new book in my collection again. And I'd say my favorite one, it'd have to be between Jackal and You're Not Supposed to Die Tonight, but that's not everybody's cup of tea. This is like a horror that was, I love Kaylin Barron. She wrote a series, or she's writing a series that's like it's a series about a teenager who like can manipulate plant life, and it's connected to Greek mythology, and so I really liked that series that they write. So when I saw that they had branched out into a horror story, I wanted to read it, and I found it to be like a love letter to horror films, and it's very like Friday the 13th spinoff, and not everybody, I found that from reviews not everybody liked it, but I did. And my other one, I liked Jackal. I listened to that on audiobook, and that one was really, really good. And Do What Godmother Says was good as well. That one was focused between a woman in the 20s or 40s, and how her experience being caught in this really awful relationship with a patron that she has. She's like a Black artist who moves to New York and ends up becoming the like artist for this older white woman, but she basically like exploits the artists of color that she ends up paying for and imprisons them in a way. And so that was about that, and I found it really interesting with how the author connected that to the present day character that was kind of starting out the story. And I thought this had a really good depiction of anxiety and mental health issues. And then this one was a really good look at like class in small town America and racism, and how everybody thinks I'm not a racist because I don't say mean things, but it's not like that. Like, systemic racism is implicit, and we all engage in it because it is the social system in which our society is founded on. And I think it does talk a lot about that in this one, and I found it really good. It's also a horror story as well, but I like horror stories, so really good. Actually, not my fave. Really not good, actually. That's all I'm going to say about that. Children of Blood and Bone I've read before, but I wanted to do a deep dive of it because it is part of the series that I want to read for the 25 books in 2025. I've read the first 2 of the series, but not the third. So I was trying to like refresh my memory, and I found a bunch of cool, I guess, AI images or people who put images on their Instagram of who they thought that the characters might look like. So I thought that was interesting, and I printed that out, and I also went through and kind of labeled out all of the kinds of magi that there are in the world and the map. I don't know. I really like this fantasy series. It's based on this girl named, I think her name is Zaylee, and her brother are like part of this group of people who've been persecuted and almost into extinction within their society. And she ends up like getting in trouble in the city and runs into a girl as she's trying to escape the city, and it turns out to be Amari, and Amari is actually the princess of their kingdom, and it just goes very, very sideways very quickly, and they are being pursued, and some people are trying to kill them left and right, and it's action-packed, but it's really good, and it talks about Yoruban folklore and just gives a lot of background on that. And I really, really like this series, and I'm looking forward to reading the second one. So I took my time with that, and then we go into April. And this one was like a heavier on the picture book side because we had some new picture books added. I requested that we get more picture books specifically about the Green Book, which was a book that helped African Americans in the 1960s navigate the entire nation, finding places that were safe for them to stay and lodge on their travels. Of Women and Salt was an audiobook that I listened to, and that one was interesting, but it was by a poet, and I felt like books by poets can go one or two ways, and it can be so abstract that you can't really it's almost like they can't see the forest for the trees of there's like a love affair with language that they have, that if they go too far, the plot suffers. And this was one of those ones where I didn't feel like the plot really connected as well as it was supposed to, because it felt like the author was so enmeshed in her writing experience, if that makes sense. I don't know how to explain that, but it was good. It felt like, again, like she couldn't see the forest for the trees almost. Where They Last Saw Her was an indigenous story about a woman named Quill who hears a scream in a forest as she's running and becomes like preoccupied with investigating the scream, what happened, who was it, and other indigenous women start disappearing on her reservation, and she becomes pretty enraptured with trying to figure out who it is and bring justice to those who have been murdered, lost, or stolen. So that one was really interesting as well. And these were 2 picture books about reading disability, so like dyslexia specifically, but I can't remember if it says it explicitly that it is about dyslexia for those. So this one was an ebook that I had from Amazon First Reads. If you have Amazon Prime, they usually have an email they send out where it's at the beginning of the month, they let you have like 1 ebook free. And I don't do Kindle Unlimited or anything like that because I prefer print reads, but I do occasionally see what they've got. And this was one that I had picked up, and it was a really interesting concept because it was like a dystopian sci-fi about the most powerful people in this society are those who have the most melanin in their skin, and the less melanin you have, the less powerful you are, and like the lowest caste of people are of course white people. And so I found that really interesting, and I liked it, but it felt like there were so many pieces on the board that I couldn't keep track, and I think I would have to reread it to really like hone in on it, because I kept picking it up and putting it down and not like focusing on it enough. And I think if I had paid more attention to it and like really tried to read it in, not one sitting, but in more sittings than I did, because this was very hard for me. I don't know what it was, but like I just kept you know, just not picking it up, and then it was very sporadic for me. So I think I would like it more if I reread it and reread it in a way that was more, I guess, like, together. I don't know the word I'm looking for there, and it also has I think it's a duology, so might try to read the second one. This one was the Kamigawa Food Detectives. I listened to it on audiobook, and it was really sweet, cozy. I would recommend this to anybody who likes listening to stories about food, but it's like a little bit of the premise is that it's this daughter and this father, and they run this restaurant. People come into their restaurant looking for them to investigate a food that they ate that has like a really significant memory attached to it, but they can't like replicate it for themselves, and so they ask the daughter and father to help them. And so the food detective part is where the father goes out and kind of like figures out what the meal was, and he cooks it, and the daughter just talks to the client and takes their story, etc. It was really nice, and I liked it a lot. The Secret Talker by Giling Yan, that was another Amazon First Reads, and I chose it because I was trying to read more for Asian American Pacific Islander Month, even though this is a Chinese writer, so they're not Asian American. It didn't do a great job there. It was interesting, but I don't know. I don't know how I feel about this one, because the main character, the premise was that she was having an emotional affair via email, but it was just kind of like a portrait of somebody who didn't have the resources to emotionally develop in a healthy way, and it was just like a picture of a relationship they were in and how emotionally undeveloped they were. That's what it was. I don't know. It just didn't... It was okay, but it wasn't, like, the best. Alright, and then we have May. So these stickers are from See Amy Draw. I have 2 sticker sheets, so I figured I would use one of them for, like, doing a monthly. Things the Eye Can't See. This one was a really good one about a teenage girl in Britain who has like a limited eyesight. She has a seeing eye dog, and the way she explains it is like she has like really limited ability to see. She can see up very, very close if she puts something in front of her face, but she cannot see further than that. It's like she said it's like a pinhole of vision or something, and she ends up getting mixed up and trying to find a classmate who went missing, and discovers that this classmate and other young men like him are being used to traffic drugs, and I just didn't see that coming, and I found it really interesting, and the way it was written was actually quite realistic. Like, there were parents involved who are very concerned. It wasn't just like, because, you know, with like YA, you have either the parents are nowhere to be found, or the parents are like a mainstay in the plot, and this one was the second option, and I felt like it was realistic for what it was covering. Someone Had to Do It by Amber and Danielle Brown. Interesting. Basically, if the premise was like if Paris Hilton had a fashion label and her ex-boyfriend was dating a intern of her fashion label, and she wanted to kill her dad, and the intern who's dating her ex overhears her plot, and then Paris Hilton tries to frame the intern. Does that make sense? It was kind of like that, and it was okay, but I didn't find the writing to be that great. This was a picture book that was added to my collection in my library, Akeem Keeps Bees, and it talked all about how Akeem and his father, how they keep bees on their farms, and they talk all about like the logistics of it, and I thought it was really cute. Again, this was a graphic novel added to my collection called Two Tribes, and it's about a girl named Mia who is Jewish on her mother's side and indigenous on her father's side, and is kind of grappling with those two identities, and I found it really, really good and realistic and kind of parent trappy in a way. So yeah, I liked that one. Then this one was fantastic. Weirdo. Oh man, I loved this one. It was a story about a boy who's bullied. He suffers from mental health issues because of it. And it really, like, I would have loved to have a book like this in middle school. Like, this is such an important book. If you know any preteen or teenager who either is struggling with bullying or self-esteem or depression, highly recommend this book. I also read the Enola Holmes graphic novel. It covers the first 3 books in this series, and I liked it, but also I was more drawn to the storyline about Enola and her brothers Sherlock and Mycroft. I wasn't really interested in the mysteries themselves, so that's kind of like, I feel like that's me being the adult who has read all of the Sherlock Holmes stories. And this little spin-off, I was like, oh, tell me more about the siblings. And that's like a thorough line through the stories that keeps popping up, but it's not like, it's something in the background that keeps the story going. It's not the main focus of each book. Like Wind Against Rock was another Amazon First Reads digital book that I had, and I still don't know if I processed this one enough. It was very, very striking to me. It follows Alice. She is the daughter of 2 South Korean immigrants, and her father recently passed away, and her mom starts acting completely different after her father dies, and she finds her father's journal, asks a man she knows to translate it, and then when he starts reading it, he starts discovering a bunch of information about her dad that she didn't know, and it just leads down this whole like rabbit hole of like, how do we really know the people that we love? Like, do we know them? Especially our parents, you know, if you think about your parents, they lived whole lives before you came into the world, and you only see like 50% of their day, if that, you know? So it's just interesting, and it talked a lot about like struggling with the identity of being a successful like immigrant child in America, but also the different kinds of marriages and relationships we have, and how we can kind of bury our heads in the sand just to cope. And so yeah, I still am thinking about this one. If I rated books with stars, I would give it a 5 out of 5, but that's just because my personal life, I just really related to this, so it just really struck me. So Into the Uncut Grass was a smaller book by Trevor Noah that came out in 2024 that we had added to our children's collection. And when I tell you, the foreword alone, okay? It was a fantastic story. And he mentioned in the foreword that it's not a children's book, it's a book for children to read with adults and vice versa. I would say that's very much true, because it's more of a allegory or like a vehicle for Noah's like point that he's trying to get across, but I still really appreciated it. So I wanted to write out the quotes that really, really stuck with me. And then we have June, which I have not started journaling in here. I just have some quotes that I wanted to put in here, but this is June's reading section, and that is the reading journal that I have so far. I have tried to journal about each and every book that I have read, just to give it the respect it's due, you know? But there were a couple that are complete, like, I think you could tell there were like 2 or 3 that I just really didn't care for, and then everything else has been pretty, you know, okay, if not a good read or even a better read. So it's been a decent reading year so far, and I hope it can continue to only go up. But yeah, so if you have any questions, feel free to put them in the comments below. I will be back soon with a plan with me and trying to get back into the rhythm of things If you have stuck around this long, I appreciate you so much. And I hope you'll consider subscribing if you're not already subscribed, giving this video a thumbs up, and I will talk to you in the next one. Bye.